reef is in a different place. We can no longer rely on the sort of more traditional management. We actually have to start getting creative.
There's still so much of the Great Barrier Reef to explore and understand.
40% has never been surveyed. Probably in the last 10 years, probably less than 5% has been surveyed in detail.
Next year, tour operators will join other vessels for the Great Reef Census to monitor specific areas during a 6-week period annually.
To see how the regrowth of the reef is going to be, or the damage on the reef is going to be.
The Great Barrier Reef Foundation must allocate almost $500 million worth of funding to these areas. So far, of the Reef Trust Fund, only around $25 million has been spent. 59 projects have been given grants so far. Traditional owner Reef Protection has received $1.8 million in funding.
The reef is a living ecosystem, a cultural landscape in which they engage every day, and who better to manage their own estates than those who've occupied and lived in that place for a long time.
To give nature a little nudge, $100 million was allocated for projects around reef restoration. The Australian Institute of Marine Science has already received part of that funding. Its National Sea Sim will soon be swarming again, with scientists from across the globe for the annual coral spawning event. One of AIMS's research vessels is currently monitoring its gene-assisted coral, bred from cooler and warmer regions. The so-called super coral were placed onto the reef near Townsville earlier this year.
We're very pleased to see that a fair few of them are surviving.
Charlie Veron welcomes the government funding, but says it shouldn't be managed by the foundation.
I think that money ought to have been given to the Commonwealth authorities that actually know something about the Great Barrier Reef.
Poor water quality, primarily from land-based runoff, has been identified as a major threat to the Great Barrier Reef. $201 million has been set aside for water quality improvements from the Reef Trust.
Yeah, because of our size.
In Cairns' third-generation cane grower, Mark Savina, doesn't think he'll receive funding because he says the Barron Delta, where he farms, isn't considered a priority area.
I've lowered the amount to the reef. I've lowered everything. I've done everything as far as I can go economically. So if they want me to go further, we have to find a way of making up the gap.
The foundation says the Barron catchment is a moderate priority area, but hasn't ruled out extending the funding there in future years. Recently, the Queensland Parliament, despite strong opposition, passed mandatory runoff regulations to improve water quality.
They're probably 3,000-4,000 tonne farmers.
Mark voluntarily made the changes, but is concerned about what it means for older farmers.
They're making them a criminal. That's basically what they're doing. And they've not done anything wrong. It's just maybe some paperwork that they haven't filled in.
The high CO2 that gets into water changes the water chemistry.
Dr. Katharina Fabricius says although there have been improvements, more can be done.
The Great Barrier Reef is growing on a continental shelf that is very shallow. So everything that's coming down the rivers is staying in the system and gets resuspended and really is retained for months and months on end.
When fertilisers and other pollutants are in the water, the food source of the coral-munching crown-of-thorns starfish thrives.
We don't just go out and control crown-of-thorns starfish. We need to then think about making sure we've got the best water quality entering the reef. It's about making sure we minimise the volume of marine debris. It's about making sure that our practices that we engage in on the reef are responsible.
The economic value of the reef system is estimated to be $56 billion. So do those who work on the reef hold hope for its future?
What we predict into the future is pretty much doom and gloom, but we must offset that against a new generation of people who do care for the planet and are prepared to do something about it.
The aquarium is still broken. The resilience of the reef is a very good sign, but it's not enough.